Life happens, and not always the way we expect it to. Every single day, we face change, stress, and uncertainty. What if you could learn to thrive no matter what life throws your way? Resilience expert Adam Markell and his inspiring guests explore breakthrough strategies to fully embrace change and build the resilience required to become change-proof.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam Markell, and welcome back to another episode of the Change Proof Podcast. I have an amazing guest in store for you today, a very senior leader at an organization that we don't get to hear from that frequently. So I'm going to go ahead, read his bio, and then just jump right in. His name is Chris King, and Chris is the Director of Corporate Services at the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, INPO as it is called, and Communications Program Director for the World Association of Nuclear Operators in their Atlanta Center. With over 29 years of experience in the commercial nuclear industry, Chris is truly an expert that we will learn a lot from. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Chris King. All right, Chris, so it is fun for me, and I mean this, it's fun to read someone else's bio and share their accomplishments in the world, and yours is, most people haven't traversed the same ground. That's obvious, but a lot of people haven't been to the places that you've been and dealt with the kind of things, serious things that you deal with daily. So outside of the bio, my question to you is, what's one thing that's not baked into your CV? One thing that you would love for people to know about you that's not what people customarily or typically learn about you?
I don't know that you would get it out of my bio. Perhaps if you dug deep enough, you might be able to. But, one of the things, I started in this industry in 1996, so I've been here a minute. But thinking back then to where we are now when it comes to our organizations understanding and appreciating the way to use strategic communications to help their business run better, help improve morale, and help align our workforce to all be rowing in the same direction. Back in the day when I was part of the communications team here, we were order takers. It was like, hey, I need a thing. Here's the thing I need. We would take that order. We would do very good things. And the ka-chunk machine would push it back out the other end, and we gave them exactly what they asked for. We were proud of it. Now, we've conditioned the leaders in our industry to understand that while they're very effective, very successful at operating nuclear power stations, they may not be as good in helping to engage the workforce. And so instead of them coming to us as professionals and say, here's what I need, they come and say, here's my problem. How can you help me solve that problem based on what you know around engaging a workforce through strategic communications? And that's been done with a peer group in my industry that are second to none. There's a group of professionals out there that I'm proud to call friends and just comrades in the industry right now. So that's one area that you probably wouldn't get out of my bio.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect lead in. It usually is. This question leads right into the next thing in the sequence. And that is, how important in your industry is the engagement of the workforce? Because so many things that we're hearing today are really focused on technology, especially artificial intelligence. And that is, on some level, I think people are afraid of it, because it feels like it's like human minus.
Right.
And I think it augments, it's an augmentation to how humans can show up. At least that's how I'm framing it in my world. But we might dive down that AI, down that rabbit hole, or maybe it's not a rabbit hole either. But I'm curious how important the communication piece is to the workforce in your industry. So highly technical.
Yeah. So it always comes down to relationships and knowing people, right? So what we have found, and it was an aspect of helping us achieve what I just described, which was when we got involved with leadership teams that may be in a performance challenge space, when we could come and sit down with them, we being it wasn't just me. So the way it would work is I would bring two of my peers with me to a station that may be challenged. And we would sit down with their professional communications team, but also their station leadership team and talk to them about find out what they're doing. We'd interview them, but what we've been able to do is help them see how just employing some things around being seen out amongst your workforce, just, the whole manage by walking around, while is somewhat of a cliche, it works. If you think about this giant industrial setting that is a nuclear power plant and having your senior most leaders walking through this place and engaging with their employees, it breaks down some of that siloing or that uncertainty that you may have, especially as a new leader, that may be created just because those people don't know you. And if you're trying to drive for a vision or you're trying to drive to accomplish a thing and you don't have buy-in by those folks who are walking the floors, you're doomed. And so what we've been able to do over a number of years is help prove the reality that being a strong leader, you have to be able to connect with your employees. You can't manage from your ivory tower, but you have to be around walking and meeting and understanding what your employees are doing and what they're going through every day.
And before we even hit the record button and started this thing, we were talking about change. And I think that, again, this is a perfect lead into the conversation around change, which is not just in the nuclear space. Obviously, it's in every industry, it's in every business, it's in every aspect of human existence. This sort of this ever-present change. But I would say even today, what feels like a profound uptick in the velocity, the pace of change. So, like you said, when it comes to getting people to buy into change or to doing things differently, do you have a personal philosophy that you share in those settings that you're describing where you're trying to help that leader, that either kind of seasoned leader or that newly minted but green kind of leader, get
So
other
yeah,
people engaged around change?
yeah. So if you think about someone who's trying to kind of change the way that we do business, and so being able to help those leaders understand that it can't always be directive, even as a new leader. But if you bring people along with you and you get some early adopters who can be your deputized advocates back out in the field when you're not around. But if you get a group of individuals who feel like they are a contributor to the success or a contributor to the direction that your organization is taking, again, you get those advocates that are built into the workforce that you don't have to be there to sell the idea. You've now deputized some folks to be out there on your behalf and speak the truth that you want them to speak, to begin to convince others who may not be early adopters, to begin to bring them along to buy into the change as well.
What would you say is the greatest headwind to that? Because in the ideal situation, the leader is out there, visible, connecting, modeling, even perhaps whatever the change might be, being an advocate and then enrolling other advocates. Just the contagion, right? It becomes
Yeah,
contagious. Your positivity around something, other people pick it up and then they pass it on. And that's a good scenario. That becomes a great flywheel.
sure.
And yet we know, and I know in our work too, that when those leaders come to you and they tell you what the challenges they're facing are, at least what I hear and what our team hears more often than not today, is that people are not only exhausted from all the change, but it's like they're white knuckling like they're holding your breath. This is my favorite. It's the most telling thing I've heard somebody say. It was a senior leader saying, my team is just holding their breath. They've been holding their breath since they can't remember when, like post pandemic. But I mean, it's like, they just keep holding their breath. thinking that at some point they're going to get to exhale. And
Mhm.
that's how they're experiencing this perpetual change. So what are you hearing? And since it's not that best case scenario more typically, then what would be the greatest headwinds that that you're sort of
Well,
experiencing in there?
I don't know if this is directly answering your question, but, as think about those leaders who have been exceptionally effective at changing a culture or shifting an organization. Not only are they present, but they're genuine and transparent. So even when things don't follow the plan and inevitably something's not going to go as planned, right? You can be genuine and upfront with your organization and own it, right? That didn't go as planned. I'm your leader. I missed a step somewhere or I misguided someone, but where I've seen that be most effective when they do reach those tripwires or they do meet that kind of headwind is they're genuine, they're fallible, they're human beings that we all make mistakes or we all misjudge or we all misplan. But to face it and own it and just say we're going to move past it, I believe, is an attribute that I've seen most effective leaders do very effectively. And again, it's another step in creating that relationship, being genuine with your organization, like I said, but also demonstrating that, you're going to make a mistake. I'm going to make a mistake. Let's learn from it. Let's move on. And I need your help in moving on.
Yeah. I'm going to answer the question too that I posed to you in thinking about how what my answer would be. The first thing that came to mind was this sort of the idea that there's not a lot of safety. So as a headwind, I find in organizations, there's a lack of safety for mistake making. I mean, in your industry, there's probably almost no margin on some level at the macro level, like the
Yeah.
worst case scenario being some sort of a catastrophe, an accident, et cetera, that impacts people's health and safety. So there's little or no room there. And yet in every industry, yours included, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Mistakes have to be made. You have to continually learn, and you can't learn except through mistake making.
Yep.
So right. I'm a fan of, mistakes being the result of something that doesn't go according to plan, but everybody was fully committed and fully present in the process. So then
Yeah.
mistakes happen. Where I have a lack of tolerance and I'm tested in my own patient level of patience for myself and for other people is in these unforced errors. When I see unforced errors that are the result of just, you know, not being present,
Yeah.
just being multitasking, thinking about do too many things at the same time and being also just depleted mentally,
Um,
emotionally, physically depleted. So does that resonate with you? Anything you want to add to that?
well, there's another component of that is being overconfident, right? So I've done this task 30 times in the past 2 years. I don't need the procedure. I just know I gotta go do this, 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 and this. Inevitably, that's the time where a mistake is made. When you become overconfident, you don't follow the written rules, you don't follow the written procedure, and so that's a message that we regularly try to impart on our workforces is
Have
there's always
humility.
have humility. And also, don't think you got it. Just because you got it once doesn't mean you're gonna get it again, right? And so, being overconfident, but also stop when you're unsure. And so, it's okay if you're in the middle of doing critical work, but you're uncertain if that procedure is accurate and is gonna get you to the endpoint. It is okay, and it's expected as an individual to stop if you're unsure, put the component in a safe place, and then go ask somebody if you're right or wrong.
Yeah. The three, I think on the scale of the words or phrases that create the most fear in a professional of in business, but in so many areas of life. But just let's stick in this arena. The words "I don't know" are
Yes.
terrifying to people. Like, what does that mean? What does it will it mean to my boss or to other people or to my to the respect that I think I've earned or deserve? Right? It's like I
Yeah.
don't know is just. like
But to your
dangerous.
point,
Those are dangerous words, right? That what you can't when you can't say them, they're
but
dangerous, right?
okay, when you can't say them, absolutely. But it's expected culturally in my business to be able to say, and you're encouraged to say, I don't know, help me understand, I need guidance. Because we are in such a critically low margin industry, we have to encourage our employees to be comfortable in stopping when they're unsure. And even if they shouldn't have stopped because they were monitoring or running the right path, it's okay to stop. It's okay to shut things down just in the spirit of being a conservative decision.
Yeah. And that might be in hindsight technically called a mistake. Like as we were saying earlier, right? To
Right,
shut something down and then you come back and go, "Oh, in hindsight it didn't need to and maybe it
right.
cost us something to do that, right?" But that humility that leads to this, in the book Change Proof, which when I spoke for your organization and to
Which was great,
folks,
by the way.
thank
Yep,
you for that. Thank you for
yep,
that. We were talking about these principles in Change Proof, like the PAC, the pause, ask, choose. This idea that you pause, and I'll add your language to it to have humility,
yep.
to be able to ask. And those three questions you just gave us, people listening to this got to write these down if you haven't already done it, which I know people have already. But it's like, I don't know. Help me understand. I need guidance. Were those the three?
Yeah.
Did I capture those?
I believe so, yeah.
Right? Because those are questions that of a person that has humility to start with. So there's no overconfidence when you ask that. And what flows out of that from the standpoint of the collaboration with others, the trust that you have in other people. And at the times when they need your advice, your guidance, then they're trusting in you. Like that's what we refer to as having it's a sort of a got your back culture, a got your
Absolutely.
back environment, right?
Yeah,
As opposed to, no, I'll be somebody will think I should know that, the judgment associated with all that whole thing is just ego, right?
it is.
And
It
that
is.
gets more mistakes have been made, more unforced errors have been made in the name of ego probably than anything else.
I agree, and, even holistically within the industry, we have a phrase that's, "We're only as strong as our weakest link," from an industry perspective. So, what happens at one station or in one country affects us all, right? Because then it raises the question about whatever happened there, could it happen here? And so it's we have this community that feels strongly about that you're not going to see in any other industry. We have a community that feels strongly about our best interest is served in your success. And so we want you to be successful because that makes our industry successful.
Yes. And PR, I hate to use that term, but the world's confidence and comfort level around what you all do is vitally important. So it is sort of like the weakest link can destroy the whole thing because an accident that happens in Japan impacts the confidence and the public relations and the world's confidence in the industry as a whole, not just related to what might happen in one country or in
Correct.
location, right?
Correct.
It's
Absolutely.
rare. There aren't that many industries where, if you screw up the shoes, that were manufactured in Bangladesh and, Nike has to, take them back or whatever, like
It
it doesn't mean that people stop buying shoes, right?
does not. It does not.
Thin margin, as you said.
Very thin margin.
I don't know that I brought this up at during our talk. If I did, then please let me know. But I still want to bring it up with you now, which is when it comes to margin, I think what we love to do is we play with words. I mean, we play with concepts. This is a part of the fun of the work that we actually get to do because people need to think not just outside the box. I mean, the instructions somebody once said is are on the outside of the box. It's not like
Right.
like that the paradox of it or whatever. But so margin, when you think about margin, I know you're thinking about margin for error. A lot of people, when they think about margin, they're thinking about profit margin. in a business context. When we think about margin, we're thinking about the space between our load and our limits. And I'm
Mm,
not sure I had that conversation or had the time to do that with
mm-mm.
your folks. But this idea of the space between our load and our limits, I think is really meaningful, because I think a lot of people don't have, to your point, they're playing with no margin or very little. And when you don't have any space between your load and your limits, the chances of making mistakes that are, again, those ones that don't have to happen,
Right.
the chances that you don't show up the way that you're able to show up to perform like the best you can, whether it's on the field of play, the literal field of play in sports, or it's in the field of play in your job and in your role as a parent or as a leader of some team in an organization. You don't have a lot of margin, man. There's not you're just on a razor's edge all the time, you know?
Yeah, but a
Stressful.
hundred 100% agree, but in my mind, I mean, we talk about it within these walls is a good leader is gonna understand when their team members are reaching their capacity, and they partner with them to help them overcome it, and they'll help them shed things, and we work with them to give them a little bit more margin, right? And so, we always talk about a good leader knows their people and can read the individual. They know them individually, not as a group, and can relate to them in a way to help them find a way to create more bandwidth in their work so that they do have a little bit of breathing time, so they do have a little bit of downtime in their brain to hopefully eliminate some of those error likely situations so that they aren't bouncing from task to task to task and rushing through things and creating the potential for an error to be made.
Yeah. It may well be that your folks, because there is this more sensitivity around it, are probably better at it than I experience elsewhere.
Hmm.
Because maybe, do you have an opinion as to how good managers are at what you're describing? Because what you just said, if that was the standard, that was the gold standard across industry, in organizations, then people would be doing so much better than they're actually doing.
Well, I mean, if we were knocking it out of the park, we wouldn't have to talk about it anymore, right? So, I mean, I think generally speaking, we do a pretty good job of that here. But, it takes great senior leadership to be able to make it so it's an expectation of managers lower in the organization. I would like to think that we do a pretty good job of it here, but again, you know, we ebb and flow. We get those margins that are tight too, and we have to manage those as well.
Is there a sort of a genetic marker, if you will, in a leader, when you're looking at a leader and wondering, is this person able to discern what we just talked about and even diagnose or evaluate when somebody's got such thin margin that it's only a matter of time before they either screw up their health, or they screw up their most important relationships, or they screw up at work, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that might be. And you get ahead of that because you're that leader that can evaluate that early enough on that you can intervene or be helpful. What are some of the genetic markers of someone who has that capacity? Because people are going to want to know that right this second, Chris.
Well, that's a big question.
I know that.
When I meet one-on-one with my managers, being able to ask direct and specific questions about individuals within their teams, and them bringing back a full, thoughtful, kind of meaningful response that illustrates that they know what their individuals are going through. I mean, I don't know if that's a genetic marker, but it's a tactic for me to be able to understand that they're exercising that responsibility at least. Gosh, man, I think you could write a book on that if you knew the answer to that one.
Well, it's funny. This is a terrible plug for the new book, Reculture, that's coming out. So forgive me. I swear to God, I didn't plan that.
Go.
But all right, I'm going to skip past that now. Yeah, it's funny, as you were answering that, and I knew you were up for for the question. I think, yeah, maybe it's something that is, quote, in the person already, whether it's
Yeah.
sort of an empathy, or a compassion for other people. Maybe there's that. But I think it's also something that's fodder. And this is why I'm glad we're talking about it for the work you do and the work we do is that it's fodder for training. Maybe
Yes.
like this is something you can train so that other people, and you can be checking in and having sort of advocacy structure around it. I
Yeah.
sometimes use that term like you just did a minute ago instead of accountability, but just the idea that we can check in on this so that we're making sure that we don't leave people behind. Like in a
Yes.
military context, right? We don't leave any person in the field. You don't leave a person in the field. And I think in the business world, it's been acceptable for too long that we leave people behind. And
Yeah.
that's a personal statement. I get it. So I'm not.
And I've been parts of other organizations where, it's my way or the highway. They leave bodies behind them as they plow through getting something done, and nobody's gonna stay there long. You're not gonna create a strong, engaged organization if that's how you operate. So, yeah, that's a tough place to be, and sounds like you've been there. I know I have.
Yeah, and personally, and I witnessed it. I have kids that are in the workforce now, and I could see just even in the organization some big ones, which I won't name, of course, but the way that the organizations burn through their talent,
Yeah.
you know, and thinking it's so funny. It's always feast or famine. I don't know what it is about us as a species, perhaps. Because of course there was the time not so long ago, the Great Resignation, right? There was that
Yeah,
trend and
right.
and now it's the opposite. They're calling it like job hugging because,
I've
people
not heard that term.
they're making different terms all the time, right? Job hugging.
Oh,
So,
that's good.
the cycle just keeps going back and forth between these two extremes, a pendulum, it's just back and forth.
Yeah, and I'll be having conversations with friends of mine on the golf course or something, and they'll tell me stories about things that occur in their organizations, and I will be shocked and say, "You'll get escorted off the property if you were found doing that at my company." It's just that's a deal breaker. You would just be gone. So it's shocking what occurs in some organizations now.
Indeed. Yeah. I want to ask you one final question, then we'll wrap things up. I
Okay.
know we talked about resilience quite a bit the day that we were together and how that contributes to a culture. You guys have got a culture that is so committed to continuous learning and the continuous improvement. Could you speak a little bit more about why that has become part of the DNA at Impo and what it is that continue like that's fine to be on a mission, vision, value statement. It's on plaques. People have these things. There's nothing profound in that. But again, spending time with organizations as I do, so few of them actually live out that. And I got the distinct sense that this is so important to you guys. So
Oh,
how is
it's
that? Why is that?
it's in our DNA, and it's a core value of our organization is a value of continuous learning. But organizationally, it's that way, and even our industry, it's that way, and that's one of the pillars of what IMPO is about, is around you're never done, and we're always about pursuing excellence, and if you're ever in the IMPO building, we have a big, I'll call it a carving, if you will. It's a big marble table with the word excellence chiseled into it, but the last E in the word is unfinished because you never achieve excellence. And so you're always pursuing the next thing. And so that's a mantra that we talk about with our employees, but we also pursue it within our industry. So in our industry engagements, we're always talking about, so what's the next step? Where are we going to go to next? How do we achieve the next level of performance? And it's a cornerstone of what we do, again, for our organization and for our industry. It's just a constant pursuit of excellence.
Yeah. That was part of what I observed. In fact, I'd said this to you in a prior meeting we had, just that I felt like the environment that I was a part of, I got to be invited to be a part of, there was an impeccability to it
Yes.
that felt like that to me. Like every detail was being looked after. Everybody's very much on point, not on edge, just on point. And
It's a proud organization with deep commitment by its workforce.
yeah, credit to you all. And Chris,
Well,
thank
we
you so much
appreciate
for
it.
making the time to have a conversation today. And yeah, thank you for
Well,
the work you
Adam,
do.
thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed meeting you over the last couple of months, and hopefully our paths will cross again soon.
Looking forward to that as well.
Cheers, my friend.
Ciao for now.
Bye-bye.
Oh my goodness. I just love that conversation. You know, Chris has got a big time job and the nuclear industry is again low, thin margin, no margin for error and stuff, and keeping people focusing on people and human plus, not human minus. How do we plus people? And I think everything that Chris just shared with us was about plussing people, including the idea that we have to have that humility. So to, again, in our model, the change proof model of pause, ask, choose, the pause is that moment for humility, that you're questioning whether or not you should go forward with something or do something, react to something even. And then you ask those questions. Any questions are powerful in that moment, but that, what don't I know? What don't I see? Where do I need guidance? Who can guide me? How do I understand better? Those questions are powerful tools in creating greater performance, but also creating greater collaboration, greater connection to other people, because we don't have to find those answers by ourselves. They sometimes come to us. I know when I'm sitting in stillness, I'm sitting in prayer, I get lots of downloads and answers, so to speak, or not, like I get genuine answers. But we cannot operate the way we do as a human being, as a species, not as an algorithm, not as something artificial, but something totally natural. We need to connect with other people. We can't operate in a vacuum. We can't operate in isolation, in an isolation tank, or as we like to say in the business world, in a silo. Too many people do. Too many of us try to win in that way, and that is not a recipe for success. So I loved everything that Chris was sharing with us, and I know if this was meaningful to you as well, please share this episode with some friend, family member, colleague. Sharing it is sharing is caring, as the old saying goes, but it really is helpful to us too, because it helps the algorithm to put this content in front of more people that would benefit from interacting with it. So any comments you have, you can leave them at adammarkel.com/podcast. If you'd like to also engage with us further, you can go to workwelllabs.com. That's another resource to find out more about the work that Workwell does in the world, within organizations, dealing with tremendous change and sometimes resistance to that change, and sometimes other things that are not so helpful to the business succeeding. All those things are fodder for conversation and for solution making and blameless problem solving. That's what we love to focus on. So love to hear from you and engage further. We thank you for being a part of the community. Thank you so much for tuning in and for sharing your time and your energy with us as well. Ciao for now.
Thanks for listening. We hope you now have even more tools and greater insights to build resilience and become change-proof. Remember to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and you may be featured in an upcoming episode. For more resilience tips and strategies, including support for building change-proof teams, visit adammarkel.com. To get your own free resilience assessment, go to rankmyresilience.com.